You said I do 40 years ago. Will you still say I do when you're retired? Stick around for this episode where we talk about all the complexities of marriage in retirement.
Welcome to Retirees Radio, your one-stop shop for retirement planning. Tune in and get ready to take control of your retirement future.
Well, hello and welcome into Retirees Radio, where we help you lead a great life in retirement by going beyond the finances. And today, as you heard from Victor, talking about marriage. And Victor, it's already hard enough, right? But when you get into retirement, you're a little bit closer than you ever have been in a while, right?
Yeah, you finally wake up next door to that person or next to the person in bed and you're like, wait, is this the person I'm supposed to be with my rest of my life? Where have you been for the last 30 years as we've been raising kids? I don't know. I imagine that people come into this situation, Ben, having to re-examine that. I don't know in a bad way, but like you discover each other again. I think many people in retirement because you finally have all of this time to spend together. And for a long time, you were just kind of falling into the routine of what day-to-day life looked like.
Well, I think it gets down to kind of the more important issue of this throughout planning, I guess, is just communication, right? Because it could be a whole new set of challenges. It's a different stage of life. And quite frankly, not everybody's on the same page together, are they?
No. You know what's interesting about that too, Ben, is if you back up to the way that like really successful marriages tend to come together, you get people not necessarily that are opposites attracting, but there are complementary ways of going through life. So you'll have somebody that is very kind of concrete. They've got their feet on the ground. They've got somebody that's pushing and maybe a dreamer down the road. And that works really well when you're creating a life because it's this balance where you have people that are being practical with people that are pushing to kind of grow. And maybe you're going through that in a way that is very complementary all through this time where you are seeking to accomplish something. But your vision about what retirement looks like is often keyed to kind of that personality that you brought into the marriage in the first place. So if you're somebody that is really a homebody and, needed the other person kind of bring you out of your shell, your retirement might be very sedentary compared to the person that wants to travel a lot. And you're back to your original kind of point on this, which is about communication. You can get to a point in time that if you haven't done a lot of this communication, entering into retirement is actually seeing two different visions of what that future looked like.
Well, as we go through today's episode, again, we're going to talk about kind of ways you can prepare for this, how you can get ahead, right? Obviously with planning, a lot of it is preparing for those things and being way ahead of the curve. So when you get to that point, you are prepared, but also ways to keep your marriage healthy as well. I like to provide some action items here on Retirees Radio. If you have any questions, want to learn more, again, always visit retirees.com. There you can put your email in, be the first to get alerted when new tools come out. And there's a lot coming down the pipeline. And we hope that you subscribe and be a part of that journey as well, because we're talking about all kinds of things outside of finance to make sure you live a full and happy retirement. So as we get into this marriage conversation, Victor, I'm just, from your experience, people you work with, how many people do come in on the same page and how many people know what to expect when retirement comes and all of a sudden they have kind of a new set of challenges in front of them?
I wish there's a way of kind of grouping them together, but I've seen the entire spectrum. I've seen people that have continued their pre-working life or their working life into retirement, and it's kind of a lot of the same. Nothing's really changed. They haven't taken retirement as being a pivot point, but do something different. And so they've just continued on the path. I've seen people do things that are wildly different. I just had a meeting recently with somebody that's looking at retirement. This person ended up doing pretty well in life and could look at retirement a little bit earlier than other folks, almost like a age 60 situation. And what she wanted to do was start to work on charitable things. And so she kind of went into that saying, this is now the new phase. And she had been the primary breadwinner for the family up until that point in time. So it was a shift, but it did require some negotiation ahead of time, some discussion, because it wasn't the role that she was doing before. And it wasn't necessarily the role that her partner might have seen her doing kind of in retirement. So I've seen people come across at different levels of preparedness. And I think a really common experience that people have had is almost like a transition period. So they'll get to retirement, and let's say that there's something that caused them to do that. For example, we work with a lot of people where there are teachers as one of the couples, either the husband or the wife's a teacher, the other person might work in the business world. Well, the teacher has their event come at the end of the school year. So retirement's always July 1st. It's always the end of the season. They know they're retiring. They're spending June going to retirement parties. Now it's finally one for them. And so there's a transition period where they spent that summer, many of them not working. That was kind of normal. September comes, they're not going back to work, but all of their friends are, and they're out there kind of exploring what retirement looks like. A lot of people will get caught up on health exams. They're going to start to see the doctor again. They're going to get things in order. There might be, honey-do lists that they've got, and they're trying to get through that. And then when they wake up, now they have to have a new picture because they've kind of accomplished everything that they thought retirement might look like, which was sitting around not doing anything or doing a bunch of stuff that was on the to-do list. And when that's done, they don't know what to do next. And so they've got that transition period. And those really the people that don't come into it with a clear plan about what retirement's going to look like for both spouses, and then of course with them together.
And I guess you have to be prepared to make changes. I guess that's kind of the theme for our relationship anyway, right? Is give and take and making changes. But retirement can be such a drastic shift, as you pointed out, to where you might all of a sudden be moving closer together or even further apart based on the kind of maybe the conversations you've had and what you're prepared for. But the bottom line is change is probably going to be required, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting too, because I think that the further back in time you start, Ben, kind of thinking about what a picture will look like together, the easier it will be to kind of execute on that plan. Or, that sounds so like corporate and so achievey type of thing. But I mean, at least you'll have a picture that's been kind of painted in, and then you can figure out the rest of the painting together. It's already there, and you don't have to spend a lot of time and effort imagining what that might look like somewhere down the road. My wife Jennifer and I, a year or two ago, participated in an exercise called Our Great Life. We help people lead great lives for our clients. And you said, we want to be in integrity with that. So we went through an event that said, let's create a great life together. What would our great life look like? And that exercise pictured us 10 years down the road. And so in 10 years, Ben, all of our kids would be done with school. My wife would be retired from her career in public education because she would have met the maximum of those years. And so there is at that time, going to be a picture that was so materially different than the one that we were living at the time that we did that exercise. And kind of knowing that that was coming in the future, and then building out a life that we could have a conversation around. Like, what does her great life look like? What does my great life look like? What does our great life look like together? And we went through things that really ran the spectrum, the gamut of different kinds of experiences. For example, one of the things that we did that I think is often a good exploration for couples is we created what ideal vacations or what ideal travel would look like. And it was a really surprising exercise because we love to go overseas. We like to go visit European countries. We like to experience the culture. And so we like to do that maybe once a year, often with the kids. And so when she asked, well, is that a vacation for you? I had to come back and say, no, that's not a vacation for me. I love doing it, but I am concerned about what time do we need to get up because we've got train tickets and how do we get over there? What are we going to do that day? I said, I'm so immersed in the planning that I'm really not vacationing a lot. That's not downtime for me. And then they gets to have all the fun of being dragged around and have everything done for them. The point isn't that that's not a vacation and whether or not I'm right or wrong. Is that we got to have a discussion around what a travel or what vacation actually looked like. And it was the first time that we really got to terms that there are different kinds of vacation that we can have. And we started to plan out different kinds of vacations for us. Some of those vacations are just ones where we reconnect as a couple, no kids, no agenda, somewhere on a beach, drink with an umbrella, just spend some time decompressing, but decompressing with each other. And then we have vacations, we go and explore and experience things. But the more that we got in alignment with that, I feel like the better that we are on a path to be in a retirement place somewhere 20 years down the road where we can be really aligned about having a great retirement together and really stay invested in each other. And that's just one echelon, right? That's just around vacation. It doesn't have to do with other things like our beliefs around money or how involved we're going to be in our kids. And, are we going to be grandparents that watch the kids all the time? None of the time, half the time. Those are all parts of conversations that I think couples should have because they can have very different impacts on what an enjoyable retirement looks like. But it really starts with kind of creating that plan in the beginning.
And I'm sure that not only allows you on the same page and have clear goals, but it probably motivates you too, right? To try to push towards having success, reaching those goals together, rather than just kind of figuring it out when you get there. It feels like it would try to push you a little bit more.
It does. And it clarifies decisions that you're making today because it helps you understand, does a decision today move you closer or further from a place that you want to be in the future? Now, you can kind of boil this down, right, Ben? You can take a look and say, well, some of these things are dollar items. If there's a particular way that you want to be in retirement and it has a price tag to it, well, then you can start to plan to being able to afford what that price tag looks like. We can focus on the health area. If you want to spend time in retirement and it looks like that you want to be active, you want to be climbing cobblestone streets, in a side town somewhere in Portugal, well, it's going to clarify decisions you're making today. It's like maybe put down the fried food and hit the gym a little while to keep that mobility going, and you've got great health when you're out there in the future. But you can start to filter decisions that you're making today through a lens about whether or not it helps you kind of achieve that in the future. And for some people, I think that will be maintaining a level of life that they currently have, because one of the challenges in retirement is that the funding stops. You're not getting paid for the job, but now we have all of the time and opportunity. But for other people, as you suggested, it can help them achieve. It can drive them to being a better version of who they are. And that's a big part of what we do when we're working with clients. We say that our true outcome is that they live like the best is yet to come. So they don't get to that point of retirement and see it as a downhill slide, but they get to that point of retirement and say everything is coming up roses. We're actually on an upward trajectory. So I think if you start that a little earlier, if you start that thinking a little earlier, they can push you to already having momentum of doing those things that look like achieving more, having a better experience, maybe even having a profound impact on people that you care about, maybe having, a bigger contribution out. But you start it in the beginning and it kind of gets you on the path so that you can continue that momentum. And as you suggested, driving you to achieve a little bit more because of the vision that you can see sometime down the road.
At Retirees, we believe that retirement is much more than taking care of your finances. The key to true retirement success is addressing things like health and fitness, relationships, community involvement, personal development, and more. Retirees wants to provide you with real steps to reach financial success, so join our mailing list to be the first to receive the tools, insights, and planning guides you need to enjoy a fulfilling retirement.
I know the hardest part, and I kind of can speak for this personally, I think everybody kind of struggles with it. It's just the day-to-day putting the extra few dollars away or eating healthy, to your point. And a lot of that, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking through it. And a lot of it is you don't envision why you're doing it, right? I need to be healthy. I need to save money because I'm going to be ready for retirement. But without those specific goals and that clear vision of what you're actually aiming for, that makes it so much easier to put down the food when you can envision yourself. You mentioned, I can see myself trying to hike the Italian countryside, along the water, right? Like, seeing those things can make it easier to take that one extra healthy step that you need to take to get you where you want to go.
I think that's true. And I probably would add another layer to that, which is a guy named James Clear wrote a book entitled Atomic Habits. And he really kind of examined how people accomplish different things from the perspective of like the systems and the processes they put in place, the habits that they create. And so one of the lines from the book that I've always held on to is that people don't rise to the level of their dreams or their goals or their wishes, but they kind of fall back to the level of their habits. And it isn't suggesting that we fall backwards or that habits are somehow something less, but you think about it as almost like building a scaffolding underneath you. And so if you have something that you're driving towards, the more that you invest in creating really great habits now, the better those rewards will be in the future. If you don't have those habits, it'll be much more difficult to achieve the goal that you've set out in the beginning. And I'll give you one that's related to our topic today about marriage, which is I think one of the best things that married couples can do that are in pre-retirement is actually schedule time outside of the day-to-day to think and plan or check in on what their great life is. I have a friend of mine that is a married couple that we met in this program, but friends of ours. They're up in Massachusetts. I'm in New Jersey, but they're up in Massachusetts, and every quarter they almost have like a family board meeting or they have a marriage board meeting. And what they're doing on that is sort of checking in on the things that they said were important the last 90 days or the last time that they revisited that topic. And this is not about like accountability. They're not managing each other, but they're saying, we set out saying that health was important and that we want to see a retirement where we're healthy in the future, able to travel. By the way, that trip of hiking around in the countryside in Italy is totally one of ours. I think they have something called the Tour of Mont Blanc or something that goes through the Swiss, Italian, and French Alps, and you kind of go through this 10 mile a day walk. That's on our bucket list. But they say that that's important, and so they set that out. Great. How did we do in the last 90 days? Are we still making decisions that bring us closer to that? Should we change it? By the way, I'm not somebody that says that just because you set a goal, that it's poured concrete over and that's the only goal that you can have. I'm actually less concerned about people identifying goals and holding to them as I am of them beginning a really good habit of caring about what they're doing or acting deliberately towards something. It's a muscle you develop that says, I need to pay attention to what's going on and then make course corrections along the way. I'm totally okay with people ditching goals that they've set for new ones. I just don't want people to not have goals, right? So I don't want it to be kind of willy-nilly, but I'd rather you think about things and say, you know what, that's not important any longer, but here's now something that is, and then starting to notice that, then be 10 years down the road, working to a goal simply because you wrote it down someplace, and now you're 10 years away from something that you really cared about. So it's really, I think, more of this idea that you get into the habit of noticing what you're doing, deciding whether it makes you closer or further away from something that you care about, and then making adjustments from that. And the more that you create a cadence around that, and then specifically for today's show, the more you make a cadence around investing in your relationship and specifically around a picture of retirement that you're both working towards, the better positioned you'll be to actually make that happen somewhere down the road.
Right. And that also plays into kind of keeping the marriage healthy too, right? I mean, it's communication. We know that. And I think it's being intentional about those meetings too. And your cadence might not be every quarter, every 90 days, but you need to have a reason for getting together, and you need to be honest and use that time to actually communicate effectively, not just, all right, how are we doing? Oh, well, Victor, I'm still looking forward to going to Italy. Well, what did we do? Are you still passionate about this? Do you still want to see this? Being open and honest is still a key. And I know it's very cliche, but it goes to what you're trying to say here.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the more you invest on a healthy relationship where everything's on the table in terms of conversation, that my image of this is my sharing of an image of what you're going to be in the future is not at risk for either ridicule or judgment. This is not one of those situations where you kind of fear what you're going to be sharing. But the more you get out in front of it by being candid and really expressing what it is that you care about. I've been involved mostly in really healthy relationships. I'm talking about working with my clients. I've got a great relationship with my wife, but I've been involved with people that really care about each other and actually want to hear what the other person wants. They want to make that other thing happen for them. And I think the risk is in not sharing that or feeling like it's something that, couldn't be said or shouldn't be said. And I really think it's the opposite that's true. The more in front of this we are, I think the better chance we're going to be. And, I don't want to derail this conversation into another topic, but one of the growing areas of divorce is what they call the gray divorce or the silver divorce, which is the growing population of individuals that get divorced in retirement. They don't get widowed. It's not that they just decide they don't want to be each other. And I think that just a belief of mine is a consequence of them not having invested in that relationship or picture of what it would be like together in retirement sooner than when they had to answer that question. And, hey, look, if it's going to turn out that it's not going to work out, might as well figure this out now and not spend 20 years and figure out later. But if we're going to have a chance of being successful, I think it's going to come from really being clear with each other about what it is that we want and then devising a plan about how we're going to get there.
You're not a therapist. I know you kind of play that role a little bit, probably from time to time. And, you have to be a team in this scenario. And I think about my parents who've been married for more than 50 years. And I don't think my dad likes to travel as much as they do, but my mom still does. Her mom's still alive at 95, so they get out to the West Coast quite a bit, and they're traveling probably more than he likes to. But I think it's part of that. Well, you have to give and take, even in retirement, right? It might not be your goal to retire all the time, but I asked the therapy part. But how much do you actually have to have that kind of back and forth with a client, where one might say, I envision this, Victor, and the other might say, well, I'm kind of thinking more along this. How much do you help them try to come to that and find that common ground?
A lot, I think, is really the short answer. I enter into that conversation, Ben, out of a position of being curious and not necessarily already knowing what an answer is going to be. So anytime somebody shares with me something that says, I really want to travel a lot, let's say, for example, I often engage in a conversation about what that travel means to them. I'm curious about what that is. Sometimes for people, it's getting out of their own location to someplace new. Sometimes it's reconnecting with culture. Sometimes it is an opportunity to spend time alone with somebody, and that's what they've equated it to. When we travel, I get 100% of that person's focus in what we're doing. There is absolutely, I think, an element of therapy without it being a therapy situation, but it's really kind of getting out to the core beliefs and reasons why that is. And I much more see myself in a position of a coach or, somebody that's leading them through that as a guide and not necessarily a therapist. I'm not there to fix what's wrong. I am there, though, to help kind of with a hand behind their back, guide them to the place that they want to be. And if we're able to do that using coaching principles about kind of getting clear about what the goals look like and me asking questions to make sure that they see the same thing that I'm seeing, and we move them along that path, I think that that's probably as helpful as what we would put in the category as traditional therapy, because I'm looking at the things going forward and I want them to have a picture of what they want in the future that they can go and, well, first of all, that they can go make happen. But then my role is to kind of check in with them, hold them accountable a little bit. So, this, you said this is important and we want to be an instrument to achieving a great life in retirement. How does that look right now? Did we attend to the things that we said we were going to? We had these 3 things that we were going to do. And, some of my clients are really easy on that front. They're the ones that are reminding me. They're the ones that are celebrating with me. Hey, I did a great life item. Remember we talked about that trip? Well, that one's booked and we're going forward and we get to celebrate that. And some of them I have to provide that reminder. So another year's gone by, another 6 months gone by. You said this was important. What do we need to do to make that happen? And, I'll end with sort of a sad story that will help underscore this. But I had a client recently where they were married, and these were clients, Ben, that came to me a little bit later. Sometimes we see people on the cusp or verge of retirement, so we're seeing them in their 60s, sometimes late 50s. These were people that I didn't meet until their late 70s. And they came over, and we were doing a plan for them. And one of their goals was to relocate up to Maine. They were in rural New Jersey. They were kind of farmer bred. They were the big, sturdy kind of people. And they wanted to relocate back up to Maine. And so they had plans. And we went through this and we began about a year before the events talking about it and thinking about it. I said, you've got the funds to make this happen. Have you thought about some of these logistics? Some doctors that go over there, getting a little bit older. By the time we were talking, they were maybe in the early 80s. And the year went by, and then suddenly the husband gets sick and he passes away. And they never got to go and do that. In fact, it's been another year and she's been cleaning up what it's like to have a life alone and not with him, but they missed that opportunity. And so I like to be in a position with our clients where I help them picture something in the future that they want to do and not live a moment of regret that they didn't get to do it. Some of that's in the area of helping make sure that their finances in order. A lot of that is the Wells Fargo truck never goes into the grave with them. So it's not really about the money. That's not what they look like as, hey, we had all of this when we died. I'm sure that's not what they're, championing after they're gone. But if we're able to have them have those experiences of retirement, whether they're things that they get to travel, whether it's opportunities to be around their kids, maybe it's a sense of contribution, and they get to look upon that as a body of work. They said, this is what I did, and it was the best of the time that I've lived was spent there. That's the reward that we're looking for. That's the accomplishment that we want.
It seems like like everything else, it's going to be hard work a lot of the ways, a lot of the times. And I got to think though that it's pretty rewarding for you and to see them get to that point where they put in the time, they've taken the steps, they've had the conversations, and then they get to finally see that. It's got to be pretty special. It's got to be rewarding on both sides.
Absolutely. I mean, I know that it's rewarding for them because I watch them have that experience. But selfishly, it's rewarding for me too, because I get to know that I played a role in making somebody's dreams come true, making them feel that their experience retirement wasn't something that was wasted. And sort of as we're sort of wrapping up with this, I would say that if people are looking for concrete takeaways, I would go back to that exercise that I shared that my wife and I did. Now, you may not be with a 10-year horizon. That may seem like it is, too long of a period of time, but I would certainly look at some intervals that are coming in the future. You might look at 10 years, 5 or 3 years. And the exercise for married couples for me is for people to complete what a great life looks like for them. You might look at a great life in different domains, like your finances, your health, your relationship with your family, your relationship with each other, maybe things that you've done to contribute, but you would look in those different areas and complete that alone. And then have time where you're going to share that with one another and agree on the things that are items of the other persons that you want to make happen for them, items that you want to experience together. It's the things that there are shared overlaps off of that, and starts to paint that as the picture of what you're driving towards. I think that if you complete that exercise, you'll have a newfound appreciation for your partner. You'll have a newfound appreciation for what they want to do, and you'll have something that you're looking forward to in terms of spending that with retirement. My wife and I want nothing more than to get the kids out of the house and have a retirement together. It's not to say that we don't want to experience what it is. We still have one that's young, 11. We have some time and we know it. But there isn't something that is coming where we have to spend time alone with one another that seems like it's going to be scary or different. We love spending time with each other. In fact, we're looking forward to being able to do more of that. And we don't want the present to go too fast, but we're not afraid of what the future holds either. I think if you do an exercise where you complete the great life that we talked about there, that picture, and you share it, I think you're going to get closer to being on that path yourselves.
Is that just a matter of sitting down and just filling out a blank piece of paper, or do you have a resource you'd recommend?
Yeah, in fact, if you register on the retirees and you let us know that you're interested in the Great Life exercise, we actually have a worksheet that we've created that we guide people through. It's an exercise that I bring people that are on my team through. We want to facilitate great lives in the people that are on our team. It's the thing that we bring our clients through, and it's something that I think you can kind of do on your own as well. You kind of work through this worksheet and you look at those intervals that we were talking about, that 10, 3 years, and then you start to break it down a little bit more. You look at that 1 year cadence and even the next 90 days or next 3 months, where you're kind of looking and say, okay, great. In order for this 3-year vision or this 10-year vision to be true, what is it that I have to kind of make happen in the next year or the next 3 years? And then you kind of build those little stepping stones. And what you're doing is you're trying to cross a river. You're saying, great, in order for me to get all the way across, I need to go from this stone to that stone to that stone. And that's how I'm going to make sure it's the beginnings of a plan. But this plan is not how you're going to get your finances in order. So the plan isn't how you're going to build a building. It really is how you're going to live a great life. It's a plan and a blueprint for you to go lead that great life. And we absolutely can have that available for folks.
Yeah, take advantage. Retirees.com. You can request that worksheet there, work through that activity yourself, or just sign up for the tools that'll be coming out. Just drop your email in there. Again, retirees.com. The phone number, 856-506-8300. It takes time and work. There's no doubt about it, but I know it's much more fulfilling. And again, that's what Retirees is all about, helping you lead that great life in retirement. The best is still yet to come. Victor, as always, appreciate your time.
See you, Ben.
Palante Wealth Advisors are an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Medina Law Group is an independent estate planning and elder law firm. Investment advisory services offered through Palante Wealth Advisors, LLC in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, registered investment advisor. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet a particular need of an individual situation. Medina Law Group and Palante Wealth Advisors are not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Medina Law Group and Palante Wealth Advisors.